Hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 64554633728, and I wanted to say that fat people are the fittest, but it's just for a leaner environment. I also wanted to say that it's unfortunate that if let's say, for example, that we might suggest that fat people or people who are weight challenged, I feel bad saying fat people, even though I was a fat person. But at the same time, it's unfortunate that we can see what is their fault. And by fault, I mean what is not perfect on them as soon as we see them. And I think those are two statements. The one where they are fit, they just happen to be in an environment where there's too much food. But if they lived in an environment where there wasn't that much food, they would probably be the healthiest people around, because their bodies would probably be able to make do or get by with fewer calories, or they're probably people who would be able to survive on almost any type of food. Perhaps they don't have as many allergies or problems with foods, etc. And it's also true that it's unfortunate because, for example, if someone is a wife beater, or if they committed murder or assault or something, you can't see that on their face. You can't see that on their body. If somebody is mean to people that work for them, or they're just rude in general, and you're walking past them on the street, that's not something that you can tell. And I think that, let's say if it's a weakness, it's unfortunate that their weakness is something that is readily seen by everyone else. And I think that's, anybody who might want to denigrate fatter people, or people with a lot of weight, or obese people, or overweight people, I think that that's something that everybody should keep in mind. Just because you can't see what somebody else's fault is, or their weakness is, it does not mean that they don't have any. I think that, and one thing that I was looking at a TED Talk recently, and the guy made a very compelling argument. He gave a number of different of reasons why it is not really the fault of people who are overweight or obese completely. What he was saying that there was a sign that there was the heritability of being overweight or obese was significant. It was something that through studies they have observed that people with particular genes had a higher tendency of being obese or overweight than other people. Now, it wasn't a one-to-one or something set in stone, but he was demonstrating, and I wish I could remember what the person's name was or how to find him, but it's just basically along the lines of the heritability of being overweight is not zero. There is definitely, and it might just happen to be that, but I think one of the things that they should have tested was whether or not it's a behavior that's learned from being from living with family who have a certain attitude to weight. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But it also has to do with the fact that a lot of people, especially Native Americans or Native people wherever, they have been adapted. There's something called the Dutch hunger cohort, I think it is. And what they showed was that during the Second World War, in order to punish the Dutch people for being a part or having a lot of resistance cells or activity in I know there's a difference between Holland and the Netherlands. I think Holland is just a specific part of the Netherlands. But in order to punish the Dutch people, what they did was something that often happens when there's a famine. It's not specifically that, hey, oh, there's a lack of water and all the. It's not specifically that there was a lack of water and all the crops died, or there was too much sun. Maybe there was enough water, but too much sun, not enough cloud cover, and the same thing. Everything died. It was that the Nazis were punishing the Dutch people, and they took all of their food and shipped it off to Germany. And during that time, a lot of people in the Netherlands died of starvation. And amongst those who were pregnant at the time and were able to carry their babies to term, depending on the semester that they were in, those people had something like a 16 times higher likelihood of being obese and overweight than an ordinary person. And I think it might have had to do with, if you were in an early trimester of pregnancy, basically it's something that signals genetically, something that signals to the fetus that, hey, life is tough out there. That life is tough out there, and you need to figure out, you need to act in a way to conserve your calories. So those people who were, in gestation at that time, we can say that that is what their bodies were conditioned to do, to conserve calories. If it was someone who was just close to being born, they did not have that lesson trained into them. And this is something that it even and it's not straight a genetic thing. It's meaning that it's not something that's imprinted in one's DNA. It has to do with what conditions are occurring while you're in your mother's womb, or the conditions that were occurring while your grandparents or your parents were in your mother's womb. And that can affect not your DNA directly, but it can affect whether or not certain genes are accessible during your lifetime, and it basically adjusts your body to say, hey, conserve calories or not. So for example, I think people who were exposed to the Dutch famine, even their grandchildren were affected. Or it could be that was with respect to mice. I don't know if it was something that was conclusively proven with humans, but I know with respect to mice, that by subjecting the mice to conditions like that, the effect lasted even down to grandchildren. That if they were restricted calories, then it goes all the way down to that. So, there are a lot of things that come into play when you see someone that you think you understand them for being overweight or for being obese. There are a lot of things that are playing, but what we often assume, and I think it's something that is not necessarily thought of. We don't think about it, but I think it's a reflexive thing. It's a reflexive. So for example, at certain times I've seen myself in the mirror and I didn't know it was me, and I would have an immediate thought or reaction or feeling about the image that I saw. And that's what that happens to us. If we see someone, we have an immediate reaction, and then afterwards your conscious brain comes in and should say, hey, whatever you were taught or you assimilated that was not a fair idea to have, we should stop that and try to be fair and try to understand these circumstances that can affect the condition that we see them in. And also, as I mentioned, people who are overweight or obese, they can be very, very fit genetically, but not for the current environment that we find ourselves in. If there's ever, I say if, when there is, in the future, there's a horrible crisis where we need to be able to function on far fewer calories, those people are probably going to be the healthiest people. They're probably going to last the longest because they come from a stock of people who were able to get by on far fewer calories. But now in this environment where there are too many calories, it seems like they have a problem. Unfortunately, as of right now, I think that the problem that we have right now is that it's even beyond the people who can get by on fewer calories, and it is also beyond the people who might be, as I would have said on other occasions, companies are now, and all entities, find that once they exist, they try to further their own, favor themselves. And unfortunately, for food companies, that means forcing more and more food on the same amount of people and just a slightly, the growing population. And in many countries, the population really isn't growing that much. It's probably going to start diminishing very soon because we don't have a replacement reproductive rate. So unfortunately, what it means is that most people are either overweight or obese, and it might have nothing to do with them being genetically fit and able to survive on fewer calories or anything like that. And the rate of that is growing and growing. So as a result of that, I think that's where we're seeing a certain amount of acceptance as well, though, of being overweight and of being obese. And in some ways it's a good thing, because we do have to understand that, again, what we see as a weakness is actually a strength in a different scenario. But in other ways, I hope that it does not end up being an acceptance of the fact that we have to live with some of these lifestyle diseases like high blood pressure and diabetes and aching joints and an inability to move and perhaps work as well as we can. But I just wanted to get that out there because it was something that I was thinking, that it's unfortunate that people can wear their weakness on their face per se, and we don't know who the murderers are, and we don't know any of these other people what their problems are. Anyway, guys, so if you can wish me lucks, you can like or unlike, and you can comment about why you did or liked or unliked, as well as subscribe and or share. Peace. Thanks.